I've I've gone into several different social circles, and so my interactions there are relatively, I guess, typical given the wider circumstances. I haven't been doing a lot of approaches, so I'm not sure if I've actually made a bunch of progress there. Though I feel like approaching is just there's an extra barrier now, right? Because at least in California, a lot of people want
Yeah, the mind. Well, in the Bay Area,
in the Bay Area in
right?
particular.
The
Um,
Bay Area is like the mindset. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I was in Oakland, walking down the street, um, empty street. It's like a an expressway that like gets onto the freeway, and I'm like walking on the street, and on the side that I'm on, there's an empty field, like literally, like there's like chain link fence and just like a bunch of grass, and on the other side of the street is probably like 40 yards. It's like a 5-6 lane road expressway, and so it's pretty far out, and I'm just walking down the street, and I don't have a mask on because there's nobody around, and you know viruses don't spread. It's not it's not the Happening by M. Night Shyamalan. It's not like I'm trying to run from the wind. So I'm like walking down the street, and this dude comes from the other side of the street. He like runs to the corner, presses the button, runs across the street, and comes up to me and says, "Put a mask on."
it's funny that he actually got closer to you, right?
Yeah.
Endangering himself and you, presumably.
Yeah. Well, I was practicing my high status body language, walking by. He was
Um,
probably really attracted to me, is what I'm assuming.
no doubt,
Yeah, he was.
no doubt. He
He
probably
really
wanted to
did want to
practice.
get closer. He's like, "Is that Craig Gibbons?" Like he recognized me or something.
Yeah.
But no, he came closer to me, and he like ran up to me just to tell me to put a mask on. There's nobody else for another like quarter mile. There was no other person, and it was just pretty ridiculous, that situation that I was in. But the Bay Area is definitely like one of those places that like people are just more scared and more apt to follow rules. I feel like, just it tends to be a more like progressive area. So people
Yeah.
tend to shift towards following authority, which is an interesting social behavior. Um, but yeah, so in the Bay Area, it's been a little bit more of a barrier because, one, that mindset,
Yep.
and two, it's also like the masks and the lack of things being open for so long, right? I mean,
Yeah.
at least there's outdoor stuff.
Yeah. I mean, so I have found a couple places where I can do outdoor activities. So that's been nice. And then there are other groups that will, as I said, they'll kind of, I don't want to be all cloak and dagger, but they'll have low key events where like a dozen or so people can all sort of congregate. Um, and though I personally haven't, even walking out, I never wear a mask out when I'm walking, and I've never had anybody come up to me and say like put on a mask, or I have gotten weird glances and disapproving looks, but no one's ever said anything.
And they maybe
So
like they're walking by and they like take the extra step away or something like that,
that
right?
that happens all the time. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
sometimes I'll even do that.
It's like at some point, like you stop giving a crap about it, about what other people are thinking. And like obviously, like if you're like, here's the thing, is like I don't care, especially if I'm outside or if I'm in the building that I live in. I'm just gonna walk through, and like I don't need to wear a mask. It's I live here, why would I want to feel unsafe? But if I'm out somewhere and somebody like tells me, "Hey, like I'm concerned, can you please put on a mask?" Like I'll be respectful of that.
Right,
Like,
exactly, exactly. I think it's very important to have that, that understanding, that empathy, that everyone's going to be doing things for different reasons, and everyone has a different risk profile, right? Like maybe, I have like some diseases, whatever predispositions, I got to be super extra careful. And I respect that. So if someone's wearing a mask, I'm not going to automatically think they're a sheep, even though in the aggregate, most people wearing masks probably are being sheep. But there are, plenty of counterexamples. So, right. And so I don't want to be sort of prejudiced from the get-go. So I just assume that everyone wearing a mask has a really a good reason to do so.
Right, right. And I think there's the difference. So like looking at this from like a social perspective, like it's the difference of how you view your locus of control and locus how you interact with other people, right? Most people are passive, and passive people tend to take responsibility for other people's behavior,
Hmm.
right? And having the masks, and I'm not saying everybody who wears a mask all the time has this mindset, but I would say a big portion of the wear a mask thing comes from this sense of responsibility for other people, right? And you start to look in, and this is where like it's been politicized, right? Over the past year, people
Yeah.
start to look at like political leanings when it comes to this type of stuff. It's tends to be people who feel like it's important for an individual to take responsibility for the greater entity of the community or their country, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's a lack of individuality.
Well, I would say it's high conscientiousness.
It is high conscientiousness, and it could also be high what's the one that makes you more anxious?
Neuroticism.
Neuroticism, yeah. So I mean, high conscientiousness for sure. And it's like it's this thinking of, I need to do this because otherwise grandma will die.
Right. Well, also
And
a lot of it is simply they want to avoid social censoring, right? The social pressure. There's a lot of social pressure
mhm,
coming from very high status people, right? Like our news anchors, our government, other governors, whatever, all saying, wear the mask, do this, blah, blah, blah. So that's a ton of social pressure, and most people can't handle that. They'll just
yes.
go with the herd.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like passive, right? A
Yeah.
passive person is all about not making waves. They don't want to cause any commotion. They want to take responsibility, right? If I got trouble with somebody, my roommate's not doing his dishes and it's really bugging me, right?
Yeah.
As a passive person, I'm just going to take the shit, right? I might even take responsibility for my roommate and do his dishes for him.
Right.
Um,
But
that,
probably deep down, they'll be growing resentment.
mhm. Especially, here's the thing, especially if you see the people telling you to do this
Right.
act oppositional to the way that they have been
Yeah.
acting or that they've been saying, right?
Right.